What up, folks? Mikey G here with Alex. It is going to be a banger of a podcast. I am so excited to be here. My boy Janner actually hooked us up together. How are you doing, Alex? Welcome to the Midlife Crisis Show.
Wow, thank you so much, Mikey, for this wonderful welcome. I'm thrilled as well, obviously, and very grateful to Jenner as well for hooking us up, as you said.
I like it. You threw the word thrilled in already. This is going to be fantastic. So, how we like to do it here, a couple things. I'll do a little couple updates about myself, and then we'll go through a little bit of your professional background, and then we'll get straight to it. It's going to be quick, simple, easy. As far as updates for myself, I've been having some amazing conversations. Just talked to an incredible company, MPM Labs, thinking about doing some spaces. I'm rebranding. Not rebranding. We're still going to be the Midlife Crisis podcast, but I think I am changing my message in the sense that I offer a service for founders, right? But I also can help out marketers and startups and incubators by giving them a genuine, authentic platform and not doing the typical KOL and trying to get as many views as possible. I'm bringing quality like yourself, Alex, and that is really what I can offer. So it's slight positioning changes, but that's what I'm working on. My district, amazing. I'm part of the 111. We just had some really good conversations. My buddy Bubble from DSK, we've been trying to build in the background on other different business ideas. So I am grinding. Content's coming. I'm daily content. I was bad about it because I was working in the background, but we're going to get hard on the content. And Maddie and I, we have many podcasts coming up in the future. So I'm just super excited about life. And I'm super excited about this podcast. So with that being said, we're going to do a little formal introduction here. So Alex, if you did not know, was a lawyer and a poli-sci or political science major. She has that profession. She also started trading crypto in about 2017, got in it to kind of pay back some education bills, but then found out that she loved it. And she's really now full-time. She's got Thrild Labs. She's working hard in the Web3 space, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But this is one of my favorite parts. She also bartends on the side. And I will tell you this, bartending, favorite job ever, because I got to meet new people every 5 minutes. That was part of my job, and I absolutely loved doing that. And then finally, I got a little tidbit, little thing you might not know about Alex, which is she bartends full-time, or not full-time, on the side, but she doesn't drink. And she did that because she started a company. She wanted to be sharp. She wanted to hone her skills. She wanted to make sure she concentrated on the right things, which I think is a beautiful thing. I have a different story as to why I stopped drinking. Maybe we'll touch on that. But how did I do? Did I do you justice, Alex? Did I miss anything? You want to add anything to the mix that I just went through?
No, you did a perfect mix. In this regard, you probably moved from being a perfect bartender, making beautiful mixes, to now doing beautiful mixes in your podcast. That was brilliant, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And with that being said, we're going quick. I know we're going to be able to probably talk for 3 hours, but we got some hard stops, so we're going to get right to it. The world famous midlife crisis question, Alex, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give me episode 1, 2, and 3 to reiterate for the audience that has never been through this experience. Episode 1 will be you growing up, childhood experiences. Were you a tinkerer? Did you play sports? What did you like to do growing up? What influenced how you think the way you think today? Episode 2, professional career, schooling, mentors, wins, losses. What were those things that helped you manifest this beautiful idea of Thrild Labs? And then episode 3 is Web3. Tell me how you got into it. Tell me what you're doing now, and tell me what the future looks like. I cannot wait to hear this. As you know, as you probably can feel, I absolutely love doing this in the bottom of my heart. So we are going to have a blast. Hit me with episode 1.
Yes. Of course, of course. So I guess that you wanted to hear how I ended up in this seat, right? But most fundamentally, a little bit about the childhood. Is there something specifically you typically start with in that regard? Because it's a whole long like period of time, really, that we're talking
It
about.
is. It is, but this is what we're gonna do. I want you to talk about in that area what you're comfortable about, and
Mm.
I'll just guide you a little bit because I know you're gonna tell me some things that I think are fascinating that you probably don't.
Interesting, interesting. Well, I guess if we really want to take a bit of a reflective stance here, right? And what
Uh-huh.
really shapes people, I guess that obviously your parents are very,
Yeah.
very important, but arguably also the place where you're born and where you grew up. So, as you
Yes.
can hear, I'm not a native English speaker. I am Dutch. So, I was born and raised in the Netherlands, even though I
Nice.
live in Italy since 10 years now.
Mhm.
And I guess that if you really want to think about my childhood, I had a pretty normal childhood, apart from the fact that my parents got divorced when I was 12,
Mm.
which is obviously a little bit of a difficult time. It's always a difficult time, but when you're a teenager, you're changing like
Yep.
schools, you're really starting to grow up almost.
Mhm.
When that happens, it does have an impact on you, specifically if you perhaps have a relatively okay, wealthy upbringing, and
Yep.
then things really start to get very tight for your
Yep.
mom.
Yep.
And you kind of like have to move to social housing and all these types of things. So I guess that my parents getting divorced and me kind of like have to move to social housing and whatnot did have an impact on me.
Right.
There's way worse things that can happen in your early childhood, but that, yeah, without getting too much in the detail of it, did have a relative impact in the sense that
For sure.
I always thought about if I grow up later, I want to have enough money and not be worried at the end of the month
Right.
about
So,
finance.
I'm already gonna hop in here.
Mm,
One, thank you for sharing that. Um, you're already, like, sharing some vulnerable things, and, I will reflect on my parents got divorced when I was, like, 9 or 10, and it profoundly impacted me, right? And at that time, I did not realize that, I didn't realize, like, how much of a traumatic event it actually was for me, and 30 years later, I went through the ringer, and part of that was, like, that deep down inside. But
mm,
I don't wanna go deep, but I think you already said something very interesting, which was when this happened, you went through the social housing part, and you had that mindset of, like, "I did not like this. I do not wanna do that, when I grow up." And so I'm already hearing and seeing that, like, okay, there's some work ethic, there's some
mm,
sense of grinding coming into your mindset, whether you didn't know it at the time, but you already experienced something like, "Hey, I don't want this to happen. I don't like this part." Does that sound right? And then the other thing, reflecting back, like, I feel like you're already in a situation where you probably saw your mom, like, being very strong, right? Working hard, trying to still make ends meet. Like, what did that look like? And what were some of those? Because you already gave me a beautiful life lesson, right? You're like, you experienced something that you didn't want to. So now that's gonna change your work ethic. That's gonna change your perception. Looking back at that time, are there other things uh, that you experienced that you think helped mold the fact that you're in Web3? You're bartending on the side, you're grinding, you're building companies. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Oh, that's you're very observant, and that is lovely, Mike. I think that the other side of the story is, of course, when your parents split up, that obviously they're human beings and they are
Yeah,
also having a life, right?
yeah,
And what I observed is that really both my parents, I think it was better that they split up. Yeah, let's just say it like that. But they went
right,
on with their respective lives. My mother later on married a wonderful man.
mhm,
We might get that, onto that for like in a second. But fundamentally, what did shape me is that my father, he moved on rather quickly, and within a
yeah,
few years, he actually had another partner, two
yeah,
new children, and you kind of like, I guess that I started to feel this, yeah, almost like sense of being inferior and not
right,
good enough as
right,
a child because my
right,
dad moved on so
yeah,
much. So I
yeah,
guess that this sense of mm, wanting to improve and be better and kind of like get this value from your,
Mhm.
or how to say, get this appreciation from your parents, it started to really impact me because I started to study really, really hard in school.
Right.
I was
Right.
never a specifically really good student, but I
Yeah.
think that I really wanted my dad's appreciation. And one day I thought by myself, I'm going to study my ass off basically and get all the good grades. And then
Interesting.
hopefully they appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that really put me in the trajectory of almost becoming a bit of a nerd and really impact me all the way through my academic career as well.
Yeah. See, and this is like just I told you, give me a sentence, and we're already going through this beautiful, beautiful journey. You also just said something else that's really, really interesting in the fact that you weren't a good student. You're trying to go down this route, and then you kind of became a nerd. When you said you weren't a good student, was it just because you didn't care to study, or like what do you mean by that?
I mean, I wasn't a bad student, but I was very average. I guess that I really appreciate my freedom, and I don't really like it when
Mm,
the teachers or, the professors give you homework and you have to do this. And
right.
I guess that there was always like this kind of like, yeah, feeling this entrepreneurial kind of spirit in me. Like I love to study, I love to do things. I'm very curious, but I want to do it in my own way, I guess.
Yes, and see, like, another beautiful insight, which is, that constraint and, I reflect on this a lot because I have a corporate job during the day, and I have to deal with people that I would not, like, willingly deal with people, right? But it affords me freedom and flexibility and, a pretty cool lifestyle, so I do it,
Mm.
and I deal with it, right? But at the same time, I feel your tug is like, I don't want to listen to this person. Like I'm constrained by this, right? So did you take did that mindset happen early on then in school? Like what are we talking about? College? Are we talking about high school time?
Oh no, we're talking about early high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
which
And
was good. Yeah.
you turned it on to say like I'm going to get good grades. I'm impressing dad.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be a grinder. This is a awesome baseline. I'm interested on the what were you tinkering with? What were you interested in? Like, were there certain subjects? Did you like to read books? Did you like to go out and party? Like, what did that look like?
Oh, that's very nice question. I guess that in terms of subjects,
Yeah,
I was always very, very interested in languages.
yeah.
Like I loved
Interesting.
studying apart from English and Dutch, obviously, like German, French,
Yeah.
Spanish. I love the languages. I always had this sense of that the world is so much bigger than where we are based
Mm,
and where we grow up.
yeah,
History, loved it, learn about the past, how it influences everything. I kind of
yeah,
like liked everything apart from very, very
yeah,
mathematical types of
yep,
things,
yep.
which is very funny because I run a tech startup these days. So I have to stay away from the code. Trust me, that's a disaster. So yeah, I guess those subjects and courses were lovely.
How about like art creativity? What are your thoughts on there? Like, did you feel a urge to do any of that when you were going through this period of your life?
Oh, that's a lovely question. No, I'm happy I can like write my own name
Right,
without without destroying the paper. It's a
right.
disaster. No, in terms of art, no. I guess I am creative. Yes, absolutely. But
Yes,
drawing and all these things, oh gosh, no. No, no.
yes. And so that's why I asked that leading into creativity. It comes up time and time again with entrepreneurs, right? So what I'd love to understand is what is your version of creativity? What does creativity mean to you?
Um, that is a nice one. I think it's probably relating to me about thinking outside of the box. But
Mhm.
fundamentally, that sounds, very abstract. Fundamentally, what creativity is for me, it's almost connecting different thoughts,
Yeah.
parts of life into new constructs. And that sounds very, abstract, but I'm kind of like a constructive thinker where
Yeah.
I try to really be as well like a multidisciplinary thinker. So, for instance, I would, in terms of Thrild Labs, right? I was thinking Web3, how is that almost similar how we are meeting each other in terms of compared to, let's say, normal dating in normal
Yeah.
life? And
Yeah.
that's kind of like where my idea of Thrilled came from. So
Right.
yeah, very fundamentally put, I think creativity is for me thinking outside of the box, but thinking from this multidisciplinary approach, almost like a holistic approach where we
Yeah.
combine, different courses and different mindsets with one another. It
Yeah.
sounds very abstract, but I'm an abstract
No.
thinker as well, I
No.
guess.
It is absolutely beautiful, and I totally agree with you that, a lot of the people that come through this show have that, it's almost like systems thinking, but, like,
Mm,
outside of, like, a corporation or a business, right? Your systems thinking about your experiences in life and linking them up together,
mm.
which is, uh which is, I think, even more powerful than being able to draw a pretty picture, right? And that no, that's awesome. One question about that though, because I think, like you even said, right, they're very abstract ideas, and
Mm,
there are people that hear you and will listen to this podcast and are like, I want to think like that, or I want to do that. Like, that sounds interesting. Is there anything like tangible things that you do to like start putting these thoughts together? Is it as simple as like getting a big whiteboard and drawing down ideas and putting links of lines together? Like, what is your process there as you're starting to try to piece this stuff together in a creative way?
I guess that I try more or less in my head to form patterns and to
Mm,
think in patterns. And again, this is rather abstract. But for instance, when I write an academic piece, right,
yeah,
be it for an academic book or my theses in the past, or sometimes for the Cointelegraph or elsewhere where I'm published, I really think about a subject and I try to see patterns. I try to come up in a more legal way, also with arguments. In
mm,
favor or against
mhm,
the topic at hand, be it, a more analytical perspective, or perhaps you're arguing or in favor or against something. But
yeah,
fundamentally, a lot of it is happening in my mind.
yeah.
And what I would say as well, and this is, I think, quite fundamental, I think about the objective. So what am I thinking about creating or doing, and why am I doing that, and how does that or doesn't that align with my values in life? So I take a
Ooh.
values based approach as well.
Yeah, so you said 2 things there that are super interesting. So I come from the, this design thinking school of thought. I work downtown San Francisco in, like, the Silicon Valley area, and it comes from Stanford, and it's the same thing as what you said is, you're very good at defining a problem statement, right? Like, this problem statement is, what is your objective? Why are you doing? Like, trying to get it to the heart of what you're doing. But what's awesome is you then layered over your values, your emotions. So you're kind of layering that too. Where do you think this kind of emotional value driven mentality came from? Because as some people chase just making money,
Mm,
but me, obviously, I have a podcast that's totally value driven. I love people, I love stories, and I love deep connections, right? So that's my values. And I did mine, for example, came from getting very, very sick. And then, when you get out of a near death experience, you totally realign your life, right? And you really pick your values. And one of, my values became, how do I acquire financial freedom? How do I constantly always have friends and family in my life? And how do I create flexibility?
mm,
And then the fourth one on top of it is, yes, I need money to live. There's no, uh, what is the famous saying? Money doesn't guarantee happiness, but not having it can guarantee misery. So, like, enough money, but it's never the thing that I chase, right?
mm,
Because I think all of these other things come from you chase the
mm.
right thing. So, like, that's my version. What's your version? And you might not have a version, right? You might just be say it's always just been innate in me. But do you have anything to talk about this kind of value driven mindset?
I think to an extent it's probably too layered. I guess that just in terms of my personality, as long as I remember, right, I've always been a bit of a principled person,
Mhm.
almost like an advocate. I
Yeah.
I remembered at times when I was small, like stepping up for the person who got bullied in class. But to an extent, myself also being very vulnerable. I
Mm,
used to be a very shy and kind of like calm girl who also got like subject to these types of things. So
right.
it kind of like got suppressed in a way. But I guess that as I went through my teenage years and especially in my early 20s, maybe we'll get to that in a second,
Yeah.
saw also some, very horrible things in my family with people like passing away and stuff. That
Mm,
also very much shifted this values based approach that you say that you want to do something sensible and useful in life,
right.
have a good life for yourself, but live according to your values and ideally also have an impact on others, because
Mhm.
what else are we here for, right? That's at
Right.
least my opinion.
Yeah.
That has always been in me, and I guess that's also why I pursued degrees in law and political science, of course.
Yeah. And I think, again, just beautiful, beautiful insight. I told you we're gonna have some fun, and I'm having a blast already. I hope you are. And let's do that. Let's transition more into high school. The only thing that I have not gotten yet that I'm very keenly interested in on is like what did you do for fun at this time? Were you a sports person? Were you a hiker? Did you just like to read books? Like what did you do?
That is lovely. I mean, I always loved soccer, so like
Oh,
European
okay.
soccer. I also played as a kid. I was not really good at it.
Yeah.
Luckily, I have a good kind of like posture in the sense that I don't need to do too much sports. Otherwise,
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
would have been different. So I always loved to follow football, but yeah, and just read and just hang out with friends,
Yeah.
drink,
Okay.
have a couple of drinks here and there,
Yeah.
depending on
Yeah.
what age we're speaking about. And yeah, especially later, trust me, I did also have quite a bit of fun hanging out in discos and bartending and all the things that.
I did too. I lived that life, and you can only do it for so long before it could completely rip you apart. So amazing. Now you see why I do what I do, right? I have an incredible, like, intimate knowledge of you, of why and how you think because of some of your life experiences. Now we're gonna really kinda, like, start molding into episode 2, and, we're at the where I think I wanna start is, now I understand some context as to why you're a grinder, why you, uh wanna be better, but also do it in a value-driven way. Talk to me about why you decided to start going down this law route, or why you picked the subjects that you picked as you're starting to evolve with this mindset that we talked about.
Actually, there is a very contrarian almost thing that happened. I've always been a bit of a generalist in a sense that as I liked a lot of courses in school, I found it incredibly hard to actually pick my college education. I had very
Mm,
good grades thanks to,
mhm,
me being a little bit of a nerd. So I could, yeah, possibly pick almost any type
right.
of education. And I thought, law, you can do so many things with law.
Mhm.
And I guess that I was just hoping that during the course of those years, 3, 4 years, I would figure out what I wanted to do. I had a very specific intention initially,
Yeah.
which was not values driven per se, but I loved football. I absolutely loved soccer, right, in Europe.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to become a footballer's agent. I thought, isn't
Mm.
that the perfect like kind of like environment
Yeah,
where I can do law and hang out with all these football
yeah,
players,
yeah.
find a really nice husband, who knows. I had
Mhm.
this like kind of like ideal
That I love it.
there. And soon in law school, though, I figured out that that was not enough. I did an internship at kind of like a law firm where I was involved with, sports law. And I was like, gosh, this is boring, actually. Yeah. So, yeah, I got more and more interested in really political science. So I made that shift and there we went.
Yeah, no, and it's funny how, um you can chase again, here's a prime example of what we were talking about, right? You chased an idea
Yeah.
that was more about like, I don't know, I would say, spotlight, like it was your passion, but what I'm getting at is, and you even said it before you said this, it was more, like wants and desires might maybe not have been necessarily value driven,
No,
right?
it
And
was
so
opportunistic, very
yeah,
opportunistic.
exactly. And isn't it funny enough, we get to the end of that journey, right? And you're like, what am I doing? Like that, so this isn't even fun. This is boring. And I did it because of this fascination of what my life could be, right? So talk to me about the shift here into poli sci and political science. Was it just the fascination um of law, I mean, not law, but governments and how things are run? Or, were you thinking like, "Okay, now this is a little more value driven, I can make an impact,
Mhm.
in my community or communities abroad?" What are your thoughts there?
I think that I always had this interest very much. Even as a teenager, I remember watching like all the Dutch talk shows like every night and, watch what the politicians were saying and then thinking about who I would vote for, even though I couldn't vote yet.
Right.
And yeah, to an extent, I was like seeing myself perhaps as a politician as well, because
Mm,
ultimately what we do, right, with law, be it private law or, public law, maybe human rights law, ultimately the enforcement and whether or not, societies and individuals live up to that laws, it's
right.
ultimately connected to political systems and to
Yeah.
human beings. And that's kind of like acknowledgement, but also with my curiosity about different political systems globally, different societies, different ethical values all across the globe, really
Yeah.
drove me to international relations and European studies. And I was always I was an honors bachelor student, meaning that I
Right.
was always doing extra courses already during my law degree as well.
Right.
Economics, political science, again, studying totalitarian regimes, studying warfare, anything that I could get my hands on that I found interesting. American law. I even went to
Yeah.
New York to study at Fordham Law. I went
Oh,
to
nice.
Morocco for an academic exchange. Whatever I could do to learn and to also have fun, I
Yeah.
tried to do it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, how long does that? Because you just listed a ton of different places. So, like, how long is this taking? Is this during schooling, or are you taking extra schooling opportunities? How does that look?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it was it was kind of like a hectic period, because indeed during those 3 4 years, during my
Uh-huh.
bachelor's degree, where I did all these different courses and
Yeah.
extra courses on top, and I went elsewhere, I was just really trying to study as hard as I could. And
Mhm.
then in the nights, I was a bartender. So initially in
Mhm.
my hometown, but then later really in the center of Amsterdam in a bar and disco. And there were a lot of times where I was, in the night doing 12-hour shifts and then sleep like on the sofa on the couch, actually in the
Wow.
bar, and then I would go to university the next day again and to be in college. Yeah.
So, this is also a fascinating topic that comes up. That is like true grind, right? And you're doing it because you know it's gonna give you a better outcome, going through all this. What is your thought about, burnout, right? Because that's a lot, and that's multiple years, like, a lot going on, right? So, what did A or you can talk about any facet of this, but, like, do you think, you broke at some point, or how long was that sustainable? Or did you have a method to rejuvenate yourself to keep on going? Because in my opinion, you can't last like that forever. What are your thoughts on burnout and that period of your life?
I guess that to a great extent, I will speak for myself.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
are there are
Always.
ways, right, to
Mhm.
mitigate external impacts on you as a human being. Be them things that happen in your private life, be them working your ass off, be them pressure from university or work. Um, I guess that the fundamental point is that I was, to an extent, really close to a burnout, and perhaps even had one when
Yeah.
my father got ill in my first or second year of university.
Right.
When he got ill, and basically he passed away basically 3 months later after we
Wow.
got the initial news.
Mhm.
Um, I think I was really close to burnout, but I just kept working and I just kept studying. And I just kept going, which was, looking back, probably not the right approach, because I did think I didn't deal with a lot of the emotions and things that have happened
Mm,
until much later. So I guess
yes,
my way is just to keep pushing through always.
yes. So that is a beautiful insight because I did the same thing and it didn't end well. And I've even never asked myself this question is like, what would I have done differently? But I'm going to ask you that question. And if you don't have an answer, that's totally fine. But like looking back, going through all of these emotions, things happening personally, but you're still just grinding, and that was your way. My same thing was I was gonna grind, or I got really good at just like burying things deep down inside. So looking back, would you do anything differently in the sense of maintaining uh, this kind of burnout mentality, avoiding that, maybe even on the mental side or the physical side of things? Of like, how would you do that differently, opposed to just saying, "I'm gonna keep on grinding"? Do you have any thoughts there? And if not, it's totally cool.
No, I do have thoughts. Thank you for your question. I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of years. We will get to that probably later as to why. I think what's I guess that sometimes as humans, or at least me, it's easy to be scared to feel things, to
Mm,
feel so sad, to feel
yeah,
really hurt, and to really face really detrimental questions, again, about life and death, and why are we
yeah,
here, and all this pain that you're perceiving from people close to you.
yep.
And it's really easy to run away. And I would perhaps say that, actually, if you do really try to face these pains rather than being scared to feel things, it is better for you in the longer run. But would I have changed it? No, because I do think that it put me into the position of where I am today, with all the
Mm,
goods and bad parts that it brought me. And I do think I try not to regret things from the past,
yeah, no,
fundamentally.
amazing insight, because I totally align and I totally agree. Like that really speaks to me too, right? Is I just think, and especially in this day and age, right? People do a horrific job of just sitting with things, right? And it could be as easy as that. Like you just recognizing, like, hey, I'm gonna take a day, maybe even 2 days, and I'm gonna just sit with how I feel and kinda process that. It can be as simple as that, right? But we are always told to grind, 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 do this, do that. We've got shit from social media and the internet and like, everything is just being pumped in our face 24/7, and it's like, I wish people would understand how critically important it is to be able to just sit and breathe and think, right? Because you can get caught up in this rat race and it's crazy. So, love that insight. Beautiful insight. I hope somebody listens to this that is in a similar situation and takes our advice to just take some deep breaths, take a full day. It's okay, right? If you take a full day or two, guess what? Your life is not going to end. But I guarantee you this, it's going to help you mentally. And as a human, if you start trying to process the things, is like, why am I feeling burnt out? Right? We had a Rough Riders. I don't know if you've heard of that Web3 company, but um, one of their co-founders came on and he was a doctor, and I was so fascinated by this conversation because there's actually a medical diagnosis for burnout,
Mm.
which comes with like anxiety, depression, all of these other things that you feel. So this topic just fascinates me, and your insight was totally different than other people's insights. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to take us on the next part of the journey, which is, so you're going through schooling, personal things are happening, but you said recently you're starting to reflect on this. Um, in this period of your life, any other, I'm interested in really wins,
Mm.
losses, mentors, failures, like any impactful things from that aspect that you think helped kind of prep you for being an entrepreneur in the Web3 journey. Any thoughts there?
If I say no, it would be terrible, wouldn't it? But yes, I
No,
have
you can say no, no, absolutely. You can say no. That's totally fine.
some. No, I'm just joking around with you, Mike. No, I love your question, quite frankly. I think that, probably a thing that was quite forming and important was that I moved to Italy by myself.
Mm,
I mean, I didn't speak a word of Italian really. I always really liked the country of Italy.
yeah,
And due to all of this that happened with my dad, I was kind of like at some point, 1 or 2 or 3 years later, I was really like kind of like done with the Netherlands for a bit. I
yeah,
was ready to actually go somewhere where I didn't know anyone, where no one knew me. Almost like reflecting back, I do think that I kind of like wanted a clean sheet or something,
yes.
away from everything, from all the feelings. So
Hmm.
really moving to Italy by myself, going to pursue a different master's degree here, finding a job by myself, living relatively young without any financial support from your parents.
Hmm.
I do think that was probably shaping. And I do know that a lot of students and younger people actually do have that drive to go to somewhere by themselves. And I really respect them. I'm not unique at all.
Right.
But it did shape me because it did show me that I have capabilities outside of the academic kind of area, where I'm able to actually build something for myself, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And going through, like, what would be your advice to someone that is thinking about doing that? And it's kind of terrifying, right? But they want a little reset and they're going to move somewhere. Maybe they don't even know the language. Like, looking back at that moment in your life, is there anything that you would say to this person? Hey, make sure you do X, Y, and Z, or make sure you do not do this because, like, it would have helped me out. Any thoughts there?
Well, if you want to come to Italy, be prepared for the administrative nightmare.
Oh,
But jokes aside, what I would say is I kind of like made an overnight decision almost to do
yeah,
this. I
yeah.
came here temporarily, loved it so much. I was just studying Italian for a couple of weeks and almost like made an overnight decision to just go with it, which was arguably not the most well thought decision. I would
Right.
I would very much probably advise you to really reflect on as to why you want to do this.
Mm,
Again, are you like fleeing away from someone? Do you something or someone? Do you want a new start? Do you think that really rooting all the way by yourself in a new country where you don't know people, maybe the culture is very different to what you're
yeah,
used to, does
yeah,
that really fit your personality, your level for adventure, your curiosity, or are you
right,
perhaps slightly more conservative? I have
yeah,
seen a lot of people also here in the city of Florence where I live. It's full of actually kind of like expats and people. Some people love it, they stay here forever. Others really feel that it's not the right match for them.
right,
So
right,
really,
right.
again, look at your values and your whys as to why you want to do this.
I love that it keeps on circling back to that because I think this is just a message that people need to hear more this day and age for sure. And we talked about this in my last episode with some guys that are devs. They're helping to build the Tari, the blockchain Tari. It's an L1. Uh, Beautiful dudes, awesome conversation. But we had this whole, like, especially the younger generation. I'm older for this space, and I got and these guys were my same age. And it was beautiful. I think I am one of the luckiest generations where I grew up knocking on my buddy's door. I had a landline. Internet didn't even exist. I understand what life is like without technology, which there's so many great values and positives, right? But then I'm deeply in Web3. I can use technology.
Mm,
We're like that generation that leaps the gaps, and we're young enough to understand and embrace the technology as well, but got life without it. And what we were talking about is, and this relates exactly to what you said, is deeply thinking about the why and like what are the motivations here, because the younger generation is growing up in an age where they just click a screen and something happens. And what
mm,
they don't think about is there's all of these things happening in the background to make that simple interaction. We've done such a good job at making everything simple, but the reality is life is insanely complex, and you should have a reason and a thought and a motivator to do the things that you should do, to do the things you want to do, right? And you said that in your own way. And I just wanted to reiterate that because that is so important for especially the younger people to hear, is like things don't just magically happen. There's a reason why things happen, and there's actually things happening in the background that allow those things to happen, as, like, broad as that sound.
Hmm.
Any other thoughts? You agree? I just wanted to bring that point up because I think it is very important.
Yes, and then I would like to point out that I think that indeed your remark is also very important. And what I would almost suggest here is, like you said also before, that you're a bit of a systems thinker, right?
Yeah,
Again, it's here taking that step back and really reflecting on why things work or don't work. And
right.
what I see though is that there's also a brilliant generation of younger people, students. For instance, at Thrild
Mhm.
Labs, we have a traineeship program, and we have
Nice.
usually developers and more business oriented trainees from the best universities, usually in South Korea, for instance. And what
Yeah.
I do realize is when I speak with those young students, these are top level students, I must say that, but they're extremely driven and they're so much more agile and awake than that I actually was when I was
Yes.
21. So that
Yes.
is actually, yes, things maybe are perceived differently, but I do think that they bring an immense amount of knowledge and really drive as well, if at least you're speaking with those students. Of course, it's not for everyone like that.
No, for sure, and I'm glad that you brought that up because that is the thing that always impressed me about Web3, right? I'm like, "Dude, I'm dealing with 22-year-old people that when I was 22, I was just trying to figure out how to funnel as many beers down my throat as possible," right?
Exactly.
Like, I was not thinking about any of this. Where do you think that comes from? Do you think it's like do you think it's because kind of this older thought or, the way the world is shaping that you realize, like, technology actually is a threat to you as a person in a career because it can take away those skill sets? Or you see larger companies laying people off more, like, there's a sense of instability. Where do you think this drive from these young students come from?
I think that's a very interesting topic. Personally, I think it has a lot to do with globalization.
I agree.
So, right, the whole notion that the world became such a smaller place. Everyone is indeed interconnected, also thanks to technology to a great extent, also
Yeah,
other, types of critical infrastructures. And due to this whole globalization, of course, there is a massive amount of competition between people, not only job wise, right, and educational wise, but also in terms of how we look, how many followers we have on Instagram or on
right,
Twitter.
right.
We compare ourselves constantly with a lot of other people, for good or for bad. And I do think that is one of the massive, common denominators, if you can put
Yeah,
it as such.
yeah.
But of course, it's not a comprehensive explanation. We couldn't offer
Oh,
that in
for
this short
sure, for
period of
sure.
time.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I hope everybody takes from this is, like, the point is you're, well, 1, it's crazy. I'm a redheaded ginger guy from the US living in San Diego, and I'm talking, to you that is in Italy that has started a Web3 company. Like, technology has allowed us to do this, but the point I'm getting at is your story is profoundly gonna impact someone way more different than my story, right? We
Mm.
have such drastic different upbringings, but the beautiful thing about all of these conversations is our motivators and our mindsets are insanely similar, right? Because we all bleed red blood. We're all human beings. We all feel the same emotions. We all have the same fears, desires, all of these things. So even though our upbringings and environments were drastically different, it's isn't it funny how we always end up in the same kind of mindset and thought process? And that alone is really why I do what I do because I think it's so cool to see that me and you have very similar mindsets, but we were born across the world from each other. Like
Mm.
this is insane, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to be cognizant of time. We got about a half hour left. I want to get to Web3, but I do want to give you one last shot before we get into kind of the evolution of Web3. Anything else within that time period that you'd like to bring up as like mentor learning lessons, a failure that really impact you before we roll into Web3? And if not, totally cool. We'll get into Web3.
Yeah, perhaps there is one thing that is that I studied a lot, right? And
Yeah.
again, this kind of like brought me to starting to invest in crypto in 2017, hoping
Yeah.
to gain some money to pay back my study debt. I think that initially I was pursuing an academic career, excuse me, in on the intersection of really legal and political science and AI. So,
Okay.
and I'm bringing this up because AI is, it's so hot these days, but of course it's nothing new. And I applied, actually this was quite forming for me because I really wanted to pursue, I wrote two master theses on this topic. So I wanted to pursue a PhD, as I said, really on AI. I was rejected even though I had, excellent grades,
Right.
you name it. I had two master's degrees under my belt as well. And I guess that whenever perhaps this was forming, whenever I get rejected for something, I
Mhm.
actually only want to work harder. And I guess that kind of like circles back to this whole idea of,
Yeah.
what we spoke about in the past. And it comes a lot back also these days as
See
a
why I
founder.
do see? This is coming full circle. This is all is making sense
Exactly,
now.
exactly. So this kind of like rejection for this PhD twice. And
Mhm.
then at the same time, me getting more and more into crypto and blockchain, I realized no, it's actually, yeah, AI is very interesting, but it brings so much risks for
Right.
humans, for
Um,
societies, for democracies, etc. And then
oh,
I found Web3. So perhaps that is a nice kind of like almost transition
yeah.
here.
Yeah. And I think, um, I have to do this before we get into Web3 because this is fascinating to me. My opinion is people are are not really taking seriously the gravity of AI in the sense that a decade from now, life is gonna look drastically different. And I don't think people are giving enough attention to how quickly things are gonna change in the sense that, like, I don't know, it was even like a year ago. I don't know if you saw that Elon Musk, it was like a service agent, right, on the phone. It was totally AI driven, like
Mm,
emotion, everything, um, just inflections in the voice. Like, that was a year ago, right?
yeah,
And how quickly tech moves.
yeah.
A decade from now, I think, all of this universal income, all of these things are gonna be real topics that we need to talk about, and I think people are, like, in la la land not realizing how quickly this stuff is gonna change. What are your thoughts there?
I'm really happy that you bring this up. This is exactly one of the points that I was discussing in my first master thesis.
Yeah.
Actually, the whole impact of AI, again, from a little bit of a more systemic approach on
Mhm.
liberal democracies, on the fact that quite likely it's really going to impact not only people's income, but of course also the tech companies, the amount of money that they will have, how they can continue to influence politics, whether you like it or not, the disparity in chances and opportunities between the have and haves nots.
Yes.
Of course, individual like implications for human rights in terms of
Yes.
privacy, in terms of being tracked, in terms of the right to be forgotten. You can go on and on and on. But I wrote about this in, what are we speaking about, 2017, 18, 19. And of course, also how states will really use AI and just
Yeah.
generally machine learning, reinforcement learning. A final thing that I would like to add here is that I do think that a big share of the, AI applications will be fine. They don't drastically necessarily impact um, like how we let's say the risks in life.
Yeah.
Once more, I do want to say I do think that AI to an extent are just very, very smart and advanced technological applications that we call AI just because we don't really have labeled them as normal tech. And over time, they will just become normal tech tools, right?
Yeah.
AI is also to an extent just giving sense to something that we as humans perhaps don't really understand.
Right.
Like it was magic to fly in the past, and now it's like we hop on an airplane every week, right?
Right. Right.
So
Right. So
yes,
what
a
do
lot
you
can be said.
I think the tie a bow in this, super interested because I can tell you're passionate about this and thought about this a lot. How long? I'm really interested in this time period concept. How long do you think it's going to take for it to make a profound impact on the way we live? Are we talking 5 years? Are we talking 10 years? Are we talking 20, 15? What is your time frame there? I'm just interested because I know you know a lot about it.
Um, I think it will probably have a profound impact on our productivity and how we see each other. What I actually hope is that beyond that, it will not have a very profound impact.
Right, right. But
So yeah.
for that moment where you're like, "Oh, man, things have really changed. I get it now." Like, the moment when I got into my Tesla, when, I got a Model Y in 2020, and I got it, I got the autonomous driving package I was pretty excited about, and I use it, and I'm like, "Okay, this is kinda it's cool, but it's like, I can't, it doesn't do city driving, and it's really herky-jerky." I use it now. I shit you not. I can leave my driveway, get to downtown San Diego, and not touch the wheel once, and totally trust it. It's
Mhm.
insane, right? That is like a change, right? What is that time frame for you where you're like, "Damn, shit has changed because of AI."
Okay, I'm going to say two things. I'm going to make a contrarian statement here by
Love it.
saying probably it's still very cool for you, but in 5 years from now, it probably becomes normal to you. And that is
Perfect.
probably
That
how tech impacts societies.
yes. Yeah, and
However, I'm sorry to
no, 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 go
interrupt,
ahead.
but what I would like to add is that I do think the more embodied AI we're going to see in terms of robotics, in
Mhm.
terms of indeed more smart devices, in terms of um, being able to indeed once that it really starts to take over the bigger share, like bigger amount of human kind of jobs, I do think that there we're going to see a profound impact on our societies. So
For
yeah.
sure, right? Like, even I was even talking to my buddy about, like, just an accountant, right? Like, you're just smashing numbers together.
Yeah.
Like, an AI machine can do that eventually, as it gets smart enough. That's a whole industry, like, decimated, right? Like, even I help a sales, I work for an insurance company. I work like whole sales call centers. Like, think of a call center. Why would you not use an AI bot that's gonna hit every talking point that you want 100% of the time, right? Like, it's gonna be wild. Okay. Amazing conversation. We haven't even hit episode 3. So, let's do the TLDR of anything you wanna say about getting into it, because I do wanna spend the rest of the time on Web3 Thrilled Labs, what you're doing now and what the future looks like, because, you have a beautiful mind, and you have a lot of really cool thoughts, and I cannot wait to talk about it, applying it to Web3. So anything pre-Thrilled Labs that you wanna touch on? If not, we'll go straight into Thrilled Labs.
No, I mean let's jump also a little bit before Thrild Labs. There was a
Okay.
I had a life in the past.
Oh, I know you did, but I
I'm
wanna
just
be
joking.
cognizant of your time.
No, of course,
I
of course.
told you we could talk for like 4 or 5 hours. You didn't believe me, but I got you. We can roll.
I believe that, Mikey, and especially with your excellent questions and your, observation, your clear observations, I bet you can make people also open up beautifully. So that is
Thank
lovely to answer your question. As I said, I initially started a bit as a trader in 2017,
mhm.
and then actually decided that I wanted to really join Web3
Right.
professionally. I thought, oh gosh, this blockchain, this cryptos, it's all so interesting. It's tech.
Mhm.
There is the aspect of financial inclusion. There's the aspect of us stepping up against the rigid and sometimes very almost like corrupt institutions that I had
Oh,
been studying in law school and in political science, and I had observed, right, things in the past, how the banking crisis impacted people, including in my family. So I was always kind
mhm.
of like skeptic. On the one hand side, I was trained to join kind of like the legacy institutions, but on the
Yeah,
other hand, I became highly skeptical about it,
right.
and I found this beautiful Web3. So I didn't know how to onboard the
Right.
ecosystem. This is interesting. I mean, I didn't know anyone in the
Yeah.
ecosystem, didn't, have parents who could make introductions or friends. So what I did actually, I was luckily enough to be accepted in a scholarship kind of like program run by a German university that was
Okay.
specifically aimed at onboarding women in the space.
Interesting.
Yes. So I joined that, and there it kind of like started. They really taught me, this is just one thing that I want to share here. They, in this scholarship program, this academic kind of like approach here, they also really taught me that it is important to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
I wasn't really a very extrovert person. I still am not, even though people think these days that I am, because I'm
Yeah.
pitching, I'm leading teams, I'm sitting in podcasts like these. But what they told me is that if you don't put yourself out there online and make other people aware that you want to join this industry, they're not going to find you. So I
Right.
simply wrote on LinkedIn, I want a job in Web3. I, tried to make myself look as credible as possible. And I was
Right.
approached by a UK startup and they offered me a job on the business side of things.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So that's how such a yeah, the concept of putting yourself out there. My example of this is I found Web3 through I think I told you my old buddy had a cool cat and I won a creative competition. But that I can attribute the brand that I built and getting into Web3 to exactly that, right? And what I did is I knew I was like, and my mindset was like, listen, I have experience, right? At the
Mm.
time, I'm in my mid 30s, late 30s. And I know a majority of the people I'm dealing with are in their 20s, and we're in this Discord. And I had no qualms to directly DM the founder, right? And say, let's start chatting. And I would talk to people and they're like, "Oh my god, why would you do that?" I'm like, "I'm literally writing a text message on Discord. This is not that difficult," which is crazy to me because people even through a screen have these like apprehensions, fears, and anxieties, you know?
Mm.
So putting yourself out there is critical in this space. Especially in the fact that it doesn't even mean to be doxxed. Putting yourself out there defined to me is literally just sending a DM or
Mhm.
hopping on a phone call. I've been on 1,000 phone calls plus over the last 2 to 3 years of my life.
Mm.
That is putting yourself out there.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess that we see this also reflected in real life interactions, right? At industry
Right.
conferences, especially in bigger cities where people, meet each other for meetups, for
Yeah.
community gatherings. And what I do think is, I don't want to stereotype or generalize here because I hate that, right? You've maybe gotten that by now that I have
Yeah.
this cultural relativism, and I'm very aware that people are unique,
Oh,
obviously.
for sure.
But what I do see sometimes in Web3 is that, and that ties in a little bit also with the reasons of Thrild and Thrild Labs, is that depending on who you are,
Yeah.
what you look like, but also where you're based, for instance, and also
Yeah.
how you feel about yourself,
Yeah.
that really impacts as well, at least in business in Web3, your chances for continuing your journey, for
Yeah.
success, and for
Mhm.
really building and growing. And that is actually a shame sometimes that people who don't know how or are a bit nervous to put themselves out there and to pursue whatever it is that they're looking for, that they have more difficulty to grow. And that's an opportunity cost, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%. So let's do this. We got about 15 minutes, and I wanna do you justice because you've got a beautiful logo, you've got a really cool background we've been looking at the whole time. I usually like to start with this, kinda your elevator pitch, right? Like 2 minutes or less. I like to define that so there's a period of time. Hit me with what Thrilled Labs is and why I should be excited to join your ecosystem or follow you.
Okay, lovely. So, Thrild Labs is fundamentally building various, what I like to call synergy machines for Web3.
Nice. Love it.
I love interactions. I love synergies, of course, as long as they're efficient and useful, but also sometimes even if they're not useful. So the first
Right.
avenue, the first synergy machine that Thrild Labs really, as a company, as a global company with a global team, has built is Thrilled. Thrilled is a free and open access, really business app, really for anyone who is professionally involved with Web3. Whether you're a
Interesting.
professional investor, a builder, a dev,
Mhm.
a Web3 lawyer, maybe you are a consultant, a marketer, whoever you are and wherever you're based, you can join Thrilled. And you can almost imagine it almost like as a Tinder, but then for Web3 professionals. And you can find whoever you are looking for collaborations, for partnerships, for jobs, for hiring, for investments, anyone ideally across the globe that fits up to your needs and wants. And you can swipe and then you can have a match if there's a mutual interest. And then the idea It's just to chat and to build together, to make the space better together globally. Yeah.
That's incredible. You literally use the swipe mechanism from Tinder.
I mean, we've built our own, obviously. So
No,
yes,
no, no, but
we
I'm
we
like,
send
you
them.
have the swipe
Yeah.
mechanism.
Hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right. This is all about, I mean, this is my bread and butter. I love connections and I love, you said something interesting though. You said you like to build synergies and systems even if they're not uh valuable. Were you saying that in the sense that you just like to fail and learn from that, or what did you mean by that?
Ah, that is lovely. No, I meant that what we really try to do through Thrilled is bring people together in a streamlined way. So if you are looking for, I don't know, a deep in project in South
Yeah.
America, that ideally you should be able to find that. But I still
Mm,
very much believe that also the more accidental or surprise kind of like connections that come out really can bring you tremendous value that even goes beyond to what you were exactly looking
yeah.
for. So I do want to leave space for that. It's not all about efficiencies.
I love that, and thank you for clarifying that because that is an extremely important aspect in this universe of, business and connection.
Mhm.
What I'm interested in is, and anything that you can talk about, what are you doing from, like, because I think you have building something like this, um, you have a massive opportunity in the data aspect of saying, you're now starting to be able to see where these, like, accidental meetups happen and why are they happening? Was it something in their background or was it a skill set that you have that you're starting to see within this network? Oh, this is a synergy I would have never thought about, but these people are actually linking up because of X, Y, and Z. Are
Mhm.
you thinking in that aspect or are you more just trying to promote connections?
No, we are thinking in this aspect, but more longer term. So, what I would like to add before I properly answer your question is that this is how we build Thrill's MVP. However, Thrilled today also functions as a full-fledged Web3 event and conference networking solution. So
Right.
conferences and Web3 professional events also use our solution for attendee networking. And why am I saying this? Just to highlight that we won't stop there with how our platform looks today. We look to ever increase and ever make it a better platform with more features. And what I wanted to share on top of this is that, right, we have Thrild Labs, we have Thrilled as a
Yeah.
platform, but we're currently building a second platform called Stoked. Not very much is out there yet, but it will be a
Nice.
proper Web3 ticketing, event management, and sponsorship platform. So, what I fundamentally want to do is to create an ever bigger ecosystem where we bring together businesses, but also Web3 professionals in a lot of different ways. And then,
Yeah.
as more further and further we grow this ecosystem, there will be space for alternative data analysis. And we don't
Mhm.
share, I do want to highlight this, we don't share data, especially
Right.
not personal data with third parties. Everything that we do is bound by the GDPR. Our servers will even be soon on decentralized infrastructures.
That's
So from
awesome.
a legal perspective, I do want to highlight that, but there is so much potential knowledge in this data. And the
Yeah.
further we grow, the better we will be able to harvest that for the common good, really.
Yeah, it's insanely valuable, like, thinking about that, just my network alone, right? It's all founders, right? Like, there's value to that, and it's good to know a lawyer is at the helm because you understand data privacy and all of that because it's you said that earlier, like, at this point, like, the fact that, like, an Amazon Alexa is in everybody's house and that you are naive to the fact that that thing is not listening from time to time. It's like the privacy is
Yeah.
close to being non-existent. We actually the guys that were on last time um we had a beautiful conversation about privacy. And isn't it funny that anybody that tries to create privacy, it immediately is looked as a bad thing, right?
Yeah. Great.
And so, oh, this is fascinating. This is fascinating. So tell me, I know we've got like 10 more minutes max. I want to know how are people and what are some surprises that you've learned like recently or along the way where you had these happy accidents and you were like, oh, I didn't think people would use the platform like this? Or has it all been as expected?
I mean, in terms of, and I love this question, in terms of the platform's very development,
Hmm.
a lot of the things that because we've been building as a team, actually just came to me whilst I start to understand more about the Web3 world, but fundamentally the business in Web3 world. Thrild
Yeah.
was never really meant to, for instance, be also an event networking app.
Yeah.
Initially, I thought about it, right, to just help founders raise capital. It's really full of all these types of surprises. The idea that, for instance, right now we are also partnering up with, let's say, national or regional or local communities. So whenever a community, a blockchain community, feels that they are still kind of like lagging a networking platform, they can use Thrild for that. Hackathons, they will soon be able to use Thrild. So what I
Mhm.
want to say with this is that a lot of the new features and platforms, even if I speak about Stoked, that we're building, they actually came to me through this journey of being a founder myself. This is the interesting thing. I'm active as a founder in the Web3 space, and I'm building almost like the kind of solution that I see that I would need, that I would want, but I also hear that from people around me.
I love it. And one of the things I pull from that is, um, and it makes me feel glad because that literally my mission statement is bringing back the lost art of genuine human connection. And the fact that as we're more connected than ever before, what we're doing right now is we gonna become a lost art, which is very sad state of being, right? But Thrilled is actually doing the same thing. But it seems like to me, some of the insights that you got is like people want to see each other. People want to go to events. Like just swiping on a mobile device is not enough, right?
No, no,
And
it's the first
so
step, perhaps.
yeah, absolutely, and, like, this is, like I love this message, and it's awesome that, uh, my brand that I've cultivated totally aligns with you, and you're getting the same feedback because 'cause I've gotten the same feedback too. People are like, "Oh, thank God somebody's doing this," right? Let's talk about any insights that you wanna share, up to, like, now, present day. Anything else you wanna share about your journey in Thrilled Labs? Then we will talk about what does the future look like, and then I have one question, very softball question. We'll say our closing comments, and we'll call it a day.
That is lovely. Thank you, Mike, so much for listening so far. Really
Absolutely,
appreciate it. Also, given our time difference, by the way, this is
for sure.
absolutely
I
lovely.
woke up early, and I was
Yeah.
still amped. You saw I was amped.
Yeah, no, I sincerely, I also really respect it, right? When people have this drive and even wake up at 5 a.m., if I may say that, in the morning
Yeah,
to interview people. Like I do that at times as well. I do a call at midnight just with Asia, right? And you have to do these types of things if you want to, if you care about what you're
yeah.
doing. So I observed that also in you. So I just wanted to
Thank
say
you.
that out loud.
Thank you.
It's very appreciated. In
Absolutely.
terms of your question, I'm going to mention this just because during our prior conversation, we've spoken a bit about my dad passing away.
Yeah,
And it was actually 2, 3 years ago now that my stepdad, with whom my mother was married, right after my
right.
parents got divorced, also got really, really sick. And he died basically as well, also from cancer, right?
Sorry.
And thank you. That actually did have a profound impact on me, where I ultimately quit my job at that blockchain startup that I initially joined. Meanwhile, my mother got sick as well. She's fine now, but it was a really, really heavy time.
Yeah,
And that really put me on this trajectory of building hopefully something, albeit a small platform in the Web3 space, but really something that hopefully helps people that are way more smarter than that I am. If I can help people connect better and find opportunity better, right?
yes.
Because opportunity can be anywhere around the corner. I guess that is really my major takeaway from these 33 years that I'm alive. You can run into random people and then build beautiful companies, or you can run into your future husband or wife just in a supermarket, right?
Yeah,
With Web3 it's the same, and if we can find each other in a streamlined manner, I
yeah.
do think that it can be beautiful. And it was my stepdad who really encouraged me. He said, Alex, you can do so much more than you think. And then
Yeah,
after he passed away, and I was really sad. I thought, I'm going to take this step. I'm going to apply for an accelerator. I got into a German accelerator where I started to develop the first really ideas of Thrilled. Over time it went on. But what I want to say is this, is that if you have someone who believes in you, and they can really bring this things out of you that you didn't even expect. Like years ago, I didn't think that I would be a founder, that I would raise capital, that I would be in this men's world as a female CEO, launching a token, having a team all
Yeah.
across the world. So you can do a lot more than you know necessarily. And I guess that is something that I do want to highlight here in case anyone is watching, because if I can do it, anyone can really. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah, it's so, and again, we've now gone through your journey. Someone's going to deeply resonate with your past experiences, your mindset, and then you just delivered an amazing message. And that message, I mean, even alone of things I've done, I've already hundreds of messages of how I've helped people um, just change their perspective, and like had the time to reach out to me to say just like thank you for having a conversation.
Mhm.
So thank you for saying that. Let's talk about the next 6 to 12 months. Talked about stoked. You can't talk too much about it. Obviously, never overpromise or underdeliver, overpromise. Always do that, right? But anything that you would love to divulge, or what excites you about the next 6 to 12 months? What are your thoughts there?
What excites me very much are a couple of things. First of all, we've really decided earlier this year to make Thrilled and Thrild Labs into a more Web3 really company, right?
Yeah.
What I didn't highlight very much is that initially we built Thrilled in a very Web2 kind of way. And I simply
Yeah.
did that to test product market fit. I
Right.
think that we see a lot of Web3 projects and products being built in a wonderful decentralized, Web3 kind of way with the tech stack there, but then there is not much request. Uh, so
Exactly. 98% of the people I talk to go through this process.
yeah, so I'm very aware of the fact that we've built in a Web2 kind of way, very centralized, very, yeah, with usual kind of like coding languages and whatnot. But it's fine because again, I think as long as you run your tech platform or your business in an ethical way, Web2 doesn't necessarily have to be that bad.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it depends on the leadership, I guess, if you want to call it as such. So what I'm excited about is that actually now we're going to do a token launch. We're going to integrate more Web3 parts in our Trill tech stack.
Yeah.
The Stoke tech stack will be to a great extent also built on Web3. As I said, we're going to put our servers on decentralized infrastructures. And the whole token race, it does excite me, right? I've raised in the past based on equity, and now we're starting to raise also in terms of our token. We just opened up our pre-sale just a couple of days ago. So these are a couple of things that I'm excited about. Maybe something else to mention is that at Thrild Labs, we have a female pillar called
Nice.
Ecstasy. And it's really also meant to, I don't want to, make this too much of a big deal, but I do think that we as women in this space, we can step up sometimes a little bit more and actively help one another with introductions, with partnerships and whatnot. And really the idea of Ecstasy is that we bring together female professionals as well in the space to hustle together. I do think that there's some space for that. So
I
there's
love that.
a range of things that I'm excited about. Our traineeship program as well, our ambassador program that we're launching. There's really a range of initiatives that we're launching, but we do need money, quite frankly.
I'm in. Ambassador. We'll talk about it.
Thank you.
I have a ton of ideas that I definitely want to have like a talk offline. So many ideas and so many thoughts, but it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful conversation. I love all of it. We could have a whole episode, and we're going to talk about this later if you're open to. I am fascinated about this topic too, as women in Web3, right? All I do is talk to dudes. And that is a whole topic in itself. And I'm sure you have a lot to talk about that. And I'm just fascinated by it too, because the women that I meet in this space are some of the strongest women I ever met. Because I think you even have to have an extra extra kind of like go-getter attitude and maybe a little sheet metal skin at times because it is a lot of dudes being dudes, right? So I would love to talk about that in a future episode,
Mm.
but we are drawn with time. Last question, I ask this to every guest. You are deeply in Web3 in the networking space. You've seen a bajillion spaces. You've been on a lot of podcasts. Honest, genuine feedback about how the Mikey G Midlife Crisis podcast experience went for you today.
As I said, I think, Mike, that you're doing an awesome job. There's a lot of things that you do for your guests that are probably not immediately visible to the audience in terms of how you reach out to them, how you take care of them with emails, how you try to make people feel comfortable, how you create this exciting environment. And I do think that that needs to be said out loud
Thank
here.
you.
You're doing a lot more than only that, what is visible. And I really
Thanks.
respect that, because the lion's share of everything that we do, be it that we put ourselves out there or
Mhm.
slightly less, a lot of it is not visible, and it can be really reckoned and be spoken about. Yes. So
Thank you.
generally, you did an awesome job both in front and behind the camera. And thank you for your interest in us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. That warms my heart. Glad you felt the connection. I told you we are going to go on a journey. My closing comments for you are thank you. Thank you for sharing all of this information. You know, we did get a little bit intimate, and I think that's just so important because we all are people. We all go through these different paths and different struggles. And there's a lot of people out there that are lonely, that don't have, I
Yeah.
went through some really tough stuff and I was fortunate to have an amazing support network. But what I hope we did here today was one, help somebody feel empowered that might not have that extra person tapping them on the shoulder saying it's going to be okay, but then two, instill some knowledge and excitement about what the possibilities are, right? Like you even said it yourself. You had never thought in a million years you would raise money and have be an entrepreneur and have a tech startup, but you have. And if you, like you said, if you can do it, anybody can do it.
Mhm.
And time, you are insanely busy, and you just gave me well over an hour of your time. So that deeply, deeply impacts me. I think people don't say it enough how valuable time is, especially for somebody like you. So thank you for giving that to me. And then finally, you have a friend. You have a friend, and I cannot wait to continue to grow our partnership. And I can't wait to see what you can do because I am so excited and I want to grow with people like you. And I am deeply, deeply grateful for that. And the last thing I'll say, you made this comment about talking about the future. This would be my advice talking to so many founders. You said that you were doing Web 2 things and not Web 3 enough. I'm going to argue with you that uh, do the things that make a company and can make you sustainable, right?
Mhm.
So, like you said, and I totally agree, I far too often see people in Web 3 say, I need to adopt all of Web 3 and my tech stack needs to be Web 3. But then they get to the end of the day and nobody gives a shit, right? So, finding that product market fit, which you are very aligned with, it's very refreshing to hear. But yeah, don't let the Web 3 thing take you down because we're in Web 3, because I firmly believe in what you're doing. Your brand aligns with my brand. So keep on making those happy accidents and keep on connecting people. And we're going to make a beautiful space. This is just the beginning. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you as well, Mike, for these wonderful last words. Slowly, and then yeah, over time we will all improve, and I think we will take over the world as a Web3 industry. And thank you so much for your kind words.
100%. And we're going to be at the core of that. And with that being said, another amazing episode of Midlife Crisis Podcast. Alex, thank you so much for your time. It was amazing. We will be back next week. Check my Twitter profile for updates on schedules and the actual podcast drop. Um, of this. And in addition to, we're going to be making some beautiful cuts of this podcast for some extra content for you, Alex. But it's also going to make great content for me because we have so many amazing lessons within this full conversation that make great short form video content. And with that being said, Mikey G and Alex are out.